So the other day, I was hanging out with a producer friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, I got a track for you. I wanted you to play it with a mute." So then, of course, my brain went, "Ah, which of the dozens of mutes made for trumpet do you want me to use?" So that's why I'm making this video. This is for producers, recording engineers, orchestrators, arrangers, writers. This is to give you kind of, I don't have all of the trumpet mutes that are out there, but I have the classic ones, the ones that you're probably going to want to use the most. So this is what they sound like. Now, first, for kind of baseline sounds, I'll be using my 1966 Conn Connstellation, which means nothing to anyone unless you're a trumpet player. And I'll be using my Shure SM81 microphone. Now, I like the SM81 for trumpet recording because it's marketed as a drum overhead, and it has so it keeps a lot of those like high crispy frequencies, right? And a lot of what defines a trumpety sound, like a brassy sound, are all the high partials and overtones. So this is what it sounds like, just open trumpet into SM81. Okay. First off, we start out with the mute that my friend meant, and it's the mute that you mean too, most likely. Um, it is this one, the Harmon mute. Um, it's called the Harmon mute because it was made by the Harmon company. I think it was made first in like the 20s or something, 1920s. And they call it the Wow Wow mute. Nobody calls it the Wow Wow mute. We just call it a Harmon mute. So this is the classic. It was made classic, especially when Miles Davis started to play it almost exclusively since the 1940s. The story goes that he was playing with Charlie Parker Bird at the time, right? And he was replacing Dizzy Gillespie. And Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie sound nothing alike. Their technique is completely different. And Miles was a young kid, and he was feeling a little nervous, and he wanted to make a huge difference between him and Dizzy so that no one would compare him and say, "Oh, that's not Dizzy." So use the Harmon. So I played that low note for a reason, and I will get to that reason right now. Since the Harmon mute is such a classic mute, there have been a million copies, imitations, improvements, variations, etc., etc. So the one that I like to use is this one. It's made by the Jo-Ral company, and they call it a bubble mute. That's their word for it. But no one calls it a bubble mute. We all call it a Harmon mute. Trumpet players, this is a Harmon mute. This is a Harmon mute. Anything that makes this sound, any imitation Harmon mute, I don't care what you call it, we call it a Harmon mute. The Jo-Ral in particular comes in two different flavors. This is the copper flavor. It also comes in an aluminum flavor. I think the differences are minuscule, so who cares? But, oh shoot, the main danger in these heavy Harmon mutes is that it could fall off at any time, and that's very bad because when you're recording, you hear mute, 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 loud trumpet, plonk, as the mute falls to the floor. Anyways, we try to avoid that. So I prefer the sound of this to the classic Harmon mute. And also, as maybe you could tell, the low register is a lot easier to play, more in tune. So if you ask me to bring a mute to your session, this is what I'm bringing. And this is what most, not this particular, but Harmon mute is what most jazz players will bring. Um, let's see. Next, one more thing I wanted to show you about the Harmon. Um, they all come with this thing. It's called stem, and the stem goes inside there like that. The reason the stem is so shiny and this Harmon mute is so dull is because I never use this. No trumpet player ever uses the stem, even though it comes with every Harmon mute. We're taught in high school, take the stem and throw it out. That's why I don't have the stem to my original Harmon mute, but I did save this. It has a sound, I mean, I suppose if you really wanted to, you could write something for it, but it's generally never done. I think you can even play around with it with your hand. Um, it's actually not that bad a sound, I suppose. I will touch upon other ways to get similar sounds that to me sound better, but no one will ever even own this. I'm one of those rare people that still, for whatever reason, have this. Let's see. Next in the possible jazz mute realm, we have the cup mute. This one is a Dennis Wick, and most cup mutes just look like this. They have the cup and then the mute, I suppose. This one is special, and there are others that are like this. It's adjustable, so you can move the cup closer to or further away from the bell. This is pretty useful, and another reason that I like it. But this, you see the gap there? That's about a normal gap for any cup mute that you might get. And this is what it sounds like. And if you want to adjust the gap, I mean, on this, like I said, you can just do that. But this is definitely a thing called for in writing, and it's called a tight cup mute. So classically, the way that you make a tight cup mute sound is by just pushing as hard as you can on the cup mute and pushing it further into the bell. But with this adjustable cup, luckily I don't have to do that. And as you see, that actually does give it a very different sound. It's a mellower sound, and very useful for like ballads and playing behind other sections in a big band or something. Next, let's talk about a classical mute. So just like the Harmon mute is like the default mute when you talk to a jazz player and say mute, they'll bring a Harmon mute. If you talk to a classical player, they're going to bring this. This is a straight mute. This is the mute that if you're reading a classical chart and it says mute or sordino in Italian, it's a straight mute. This is what they're referring to. This is what, you know, Beethoven and Brahms and all those guys, they wrote for straight mute. This particular one is a Tom Crown. And just like the Harmon mute, since it's been around for so long, there have been so many copies, improvements, whatnot. This is, a straight mute. I think the classic one just literally was straight. This one just has a little, extra thing at the end. Anyways, it sounds like this. Buzzy, slightly softer. That's what this is. Next, back to jazz mutes. This is kind of a less standard mute. It's a stone-lined Cleartone mute. And I think Cleartone is a generic word, kind of like Harmon or straight or something. But here's what this sounds like. I really like it because it kind of sounds almost like an old shitty 1920s mic that you're recording through. And in addition, you can also play around with this with your hand as well. And playing around with it with your hand brings me to the next mute. This is familiar to any of you who have ever backed up a toilet bowl and had to fix it. This is a plunger mute, and it is literally a plunger. It's a toilet bowl plunger. I bought it at a hardware store, and I removed the handle, and I also drilled a hole in it. Now, the hole is a bit of a contentious subject among trumpet players. Some people like drilling a hole. Some people like having it just, completely closed off. Who knows? Those who like the hole say that it helps with intonation. I've gotten old and jaded and I don't care anymore. But anyways, this is the one that I have. Fun fact about the plunger, it is that it was the inspiration to build the wah-wah pedal, guitar wah-wah pedal, because that's exactly what it sounds like, and that's what it was built to imitate. And for the writers out there, the orchestrators, you can tell us exactly where you want the plunger to be. So there is closed, which is indicated by a plus sign. There is open, which is indicated by a 0. And there is the wah, which is indicated by WA. And there's something that nobody ever writes, but I really like using. And that's the opposite of wah, and I call it ow. I think it's a great sound. I think more people should write for that. So do me a favor and write some ows. So just like the Harmon and the straight, plungers have been around so long that there have been a lot of developments, improvements, copies, knockoffs, whatever. One that you'll see around the New York scene at least a lot is this KR Indigo plunger, built along with Kenny Rampton. The name of the mute maker is escaping me right now, but Kenny Rampton helped design this. And as you can see, maybe there's a hole, but by using this penny called the Kenny Penny, you can actually close the hole. So now it is closed. And then now it is open. Trying to bring the two communities of trumpet players together in harmony. So, sounds like a plunger, little different, matter of personal choice. You hire a trumpet player, tell them bring a plunger, they will bring the plunger of their choice. So, you get their sound. Let's see, what do we have left? Again, on the subject of plungers, I often don't bring a plunger with me to gigs. And instead, if there's a song that I'm really feeling plunger on, I'll go to the bar and ask them if they have a plastic cup. Plastic cups work great as plungers. You can't tell because you're not playing it, but the thin plastic really vibrates a lot, so it adds to the sound. The thick rubber plunger doesn't really vibrate that much, but this thin plastic does. You can also use a paper cup. And the reason I like this paper cup, I picked this up at some random bar, but you might have noticed that on certain notes, it just does this weird, like glitchy kind of vibrating. So I've held on to it since then. Please don't crush it or step on it because that would be sad. I learned this trick in college. You can make a plunger mute out of a soda bottle. So you can see that's the top. There are two steps though. Not only do you cut it, but when you cut it, the edges will be jagged and sharp and, not very pleasant. So what you do is you take a frying pan, take a skillet, put it on the stove, heat it up, not super hot, not blazing hot, but just hot. Then you just take this and you just touch it to the frying pan and the edges will just curl up and now it's nice and smooth. And of course, has a cap so you can keep it open or closed. Yikes. Well, I guess I'm playing it open. There you go. On the subject of plungers, it's possible to combine a straight mute and a plunger. This is called a Pixie mute. And I believe it was either originally developed for trombone or super popular on trombone. It's not really a trumpet thing, but they do make Pixie mutes for trumpets. And it gives you kind of what you would expect, a combination between a straight mute and a plunger. There you have it. The only other kind of mute that I have is a practice mute, but you don't want to use this to record. It's literally the worst mute. It's completely seals up the bell, and it tries to make you sound as soft as possible. It's impossible to, well, not impossible. It's hard to play on. It teaches you bad habits. You just use it if you're, if you're touring and you're in a hotel room and you can't play loud. Yeah, don't use this. Um, I think that's all my mutes. The only other mute that I would say is common that I don't have is a bucket mute. It's a huge beast that actually clamps on the outside of the bell, comes out about this far, and it's huge. And it's basically just stuffed with cotton. Again, like about this much of a gap from the bell, stuffed with cotton, and it just makes the sound softer and more like kind of rounder. Um, I'll have to get one and I'll add it on later. And um, there's a lot of call in early jazz writing for hat mutes. Now, that's basically just this. I mean, take this off, put it on your bell, makes it a little softer. Actually, I quite like that. I might use that. Um, Different kinds of hats give you different kinds of sounds. You can experiment. Now, at this point, we're getting to like experimental mutes. So, you know, come up with whatever you want. I believe that's it, folks. If you have any questions, just comment down below. If you have any, any other mutes that you have questions about or whatever, if you want to buy me a bucket mute so I could demo it, please do. PayPal and Venmo down there. I will see you next time.